Good evening, Texas. I'm Gromer Jeffers, the political writer for the Dallas Morning News, and welcome to Debate Night in Texas. We have a lot of ground to cover. We're featuring the Democratic candidates for governor, and I'm going to introduce them right now. To my left, the former Dallas County Sheriff, Lupe Valdez. Andrew White. That's the last cheer for a while. Right now we're going to start with opening statements. Who won the toss, by the way?
Lupe won the toss, but I'm doing the opening statement. So, yeah. First of all, thank you to the organizers who put this together. I know it's a lot of work, and I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Let me tell you what. Greg Abbott sat in the front row of my father's funeral about 9 months ago. My father was Governor Mark White, who served Texas in the 1980s. In the eulogy I gave, I told Greg Abbott about what a real leader is. I told him about my father and how, when he was governor, he made the hard decisions that made Texas better. Decisions like no pass, no play, and the seatbelt law. These decisions cost him his re-election, but losing was worth it. His favorite quote was from Sam Houston: "Do right and risk the consequences." We clearly don't have leaders like that anymore, and that's why I'm running for governor. Let me tell you 3 things about me. First, I grew up at the dinner table of one of our state's best Democratic governors, which means we talked current events my entire life. I'm a Democrat because I believe deeply in fairness and equality for all people. Second, I'm an entrepreneur. In classic fashion, I sold my house and took whatever I made and put it into starting a business. That business, because of a great group of employees, grew far bigger than I ever thought it would be. For 20 years, I've been competing against larger organizations, and I'm not afraid of Greg Abbott, and I'm not afraid of his $45 million cash pile. The last thing I want to tell you about myself is I'm a fighter. I'm going to fight for the 5 million students who get the 43rd ranked schools in the nation. I'm going to fight for the 4 million Texans who don't have health care because they don't have health insurance. I'm going to fight for the 1 million teachers and retired teachers who are getting the short end of the stick. I'm going to fight for the millions of Texans whose lives have been ruined.
I'll have to stop you there.
Sure. Well, I'm going to fight for that too. But the fight will continue, and it goes after this. Where's my timer, by the way?
Right there. Right.
I can't see you over there. That's my timer there. Okay, sorry.
Sure,
My fight just ended a little early. It's going to keep going.
Good evening. Thank you so much to the grassroots organizations, the audience, Gromer, and of course Andrew, for allowing us to have this healthy discussion on our issues. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the 8th child of migrant workers. In the early 60s, when I was in junior high, now known as middle school, a substitute teacher took me aside and told me that he thought I was college material. But he also added that if I was going to have a decent opportunity, I had to go to the other side of town. So I took his advice. And every school morning, I would get on the city bus and go across to the other side of town. It took me a little while to figure out that when it rained, I was the only one with muddy shoes. You see, I came from the poorest zip code in San Antonio, and we had no paved streets or sidewalks. When it rained, there would be puddles all over, and I would do what I call the puddle dance, el brinco de los charcos. I would jump this puddle, that puddle, and no matter how many puddles I jumped, I always managed to get muddy shoes. So when I got to school, I would go to the bathroom and I would start wiping my shoes. And quickly I realized that I was the only one doing that. You see, my new school was in a neighborhood where they had paved streets and sidewalks. I am so grateful to that teacher for pointing me in the right direction. I am a Democrat because I believe in giving the people a fighting chance, just as I have. I am an Army veteran, a federal agent of over 20 years, and the last 13 years, the Sheriff of Dallas County. As the Sheriff of Dallas County, I oversaw over 2,500 employees and ran a budget of over $160 million. Please, don't tell me this Latina cannot lead.
All right. Please, no applause.
Please, no applause.
We'll start with you, Mr. White.
Yeah.
I'm going to take an excerpt from your website. One sentence, and it says, "Our weak borders have read like a 1,254-mile-long open for business sign to millions of undocumented immigrants and the criminals who take advantage of them." Now, critics, Mr. White, have blasted you for owning a border security company that profits off the suffering of immigrants. Tonight, let's clear the air. As governor, how would you balance border security with the humane treatment of immigrants?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that question. We have a governor who, with the threat of a caravan of women and children approaching our border, activated the National Guard. He should have activated the Red Cross. This is not a military issue. We don't need to militarize our border. It's a humanitarian issue. It's one that is important to a lot of people. We have a border situation where people are dying crossing the border, crossing the Saharan desert, dying in the desert. And we have to create a situation using technology to keep those immigrants safe. And so specifically to the issue about the business that I own, the business sells a product that can tell if people are inside of an 18-wheeler. Because we've seen what happened in San Antonio not too long ago, where 20 or more people died in the back of an 18-wheeler from dehydration and heat exhaustion, right? That's the kind of humanitarian issue that I'm talking about. So our technology, I'm proud to say, saves lives on the border. And that's the kind of technology we need to be using on our borders. We don't need a wall. We don't need to fearmonger. We need to increase the opportunity for people to file for asylum. It's appalling to me that right now, under Trump's leadership, requests for asylum from Syria have almost dropped to just a handful of people. Syria, of all places. I mean, and there's other places in Honduras and El Salvador that are also just as dangerous. We need to create an opportunity for those immigrants to come into asylum here in the United States.
You understand, though, based on the statement I read, how some Democrats will feel that, it sounds more like a Republican talking point than what, is subscribed in the Democratic platform.
The talking points that matter are the talking points that I just said, which are we need a humanitarian response to our border, not a military response.
And when will you guys come?
So one of the organizations that we met with recently, the JOLT organization, endorsed me in this campaign. And one of the things they asked me to do was, they said, listen, we would feel better if you divested this business. And I agreed with them. So we're in the process now of selling that business. And it's something that will take a few weeks or a few months, I don't know how long, but we're actively engaged in that process.
Okay. Sheriff Valdez, your record on immigration has also been questioned. Specifically, your willingness as Dallas County Sheriff to comply with ICE detainers, including an incident in which your office is alleged to have held a U.S. citizen against his constitutional rights. Now, you've tried to clarify what you call misunderstandings about your record, but given what you know today, would you go back and do anything differently on immigration policies at the Dallas County Jail?
Well, first of all, let's get one thing clear. I am the only one that's running for governor that has fought against anti-immigration laws for years. I fought SB 4 when it came up and testified against it time and time again. And 2 years before that, they were trying to bring other laws that were quite similar to SB 4. And we defeated those. Till 2 o'clock in the morning, we were there testifying against it. No matter how many times people say it, it isn't true. I did not bring ICE into the jail. What I did do was put in humane systems. What I did do was assess the ICE detainees. Now, when you said a U.S. citizen, we have a process that the defense attorney looks at, and if they believe they're anywhere near a U.S. citizen, they take that person off the list. And if it is a U.S. citizen, then they're not going. But we did do several things to help them. Proven executives have tough decisions, and there are no perfect solutions. I made the decision because we were going to lose funds on the most vulnerable of our communities. That included the juvenile services, the re-entry programs, health and human services. I had to make imperfect choices, and I did what is best for the community. Proven executives will constantly have to make difficult decisions.
Do you understand, this issue is a passion on this issue, particularly with immigration activists, who say that you were in part responsible for the deportations of families in Dallas County, the separation of families. And they say that as Texas governor, they need someone that's gonna, have the courage to make the difficult choices, but in this case on the other side, like sheriffs in other states have done.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand?
Of course
that
I
criticism?
understand that. And it was difficult decisions. And I was put in a very imperfect choices. But let's get one thing
Would you do
clear.
the same thing over again?
As governor, I would not allow for anybody to be put in that situation.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I add a comment to that? You mentioned SB 4, which is the Sanctuary Cities Law. This is a law that is a state law that requires local law enforcement to enforce federal laws. Every single major city police chief said to our governor, don't sign it. And he signed it anyway. And what we've seen from that is our neighborhoods aren't safe. In Houston right now, reports of sexual assault in Hispanic neighborhoods are down 40%. That means there's 40% more people on the streets committing these assaults, not being convicted or even know that it's happening. That's what's happened because of the leadership that our governor provided on this issue. Now let me say this. We saw leaderships in Texas from sheriffs in the counties. Sheriff in this county right here, Travis County, Sheriff Hernandez on this very issue led with, I believe, a very strong approach to the issue at hand. She did not work with ICE the way that Sheriff Valdez worked with ICE.
Yes, I'd like to remember. No matter how many times you say it, it doesn't make it true. I did not work with ICE. I did what I had to do, and that was an imperfect choice. What I did do is make sure that all of the detention homes the ICE detentions were assessed. What I did do is make sure that the people who brought in received humane services. And what I did do was sign on to the city's welcoming city.
Okay. Now, for the record, you both have used one of your rebuttals. You have two, but I can be bribed. I just want you to know.
I did have my beginning cut a little short, so.
Mr. White,
Yes.
you've identified yourself as pro-life. However, you have promised to veto bills that limit a woman's access to abortion. Let me take this a step further, though. As governor, would you work to roll back any of the abortion limitations that are already in place? And if so, which?
Yes, let me be clear on this. I trust women to make their own health care decisions. And when I'm governor, I'll veto any legislation that says otherwise. Now, my personal opinions have been in this campaign quite a bit. There's been a lot of discussion about that. But let me say this. My personal opinions are my personal opinions. And we all have our own personal opinions. But I trust women in their own health care decisions. As governor, I'll work to end the assault on women's health care. We'll open women's clinics again. We'll expand access to contraceptives. And we'll go back to the birds and the bees. Right now, in the majority of our schools, we don't teach sex ed. Actually, we teach them abstinence only. I don't know about you. You remember when you were 14? Yeah, that's not going to work. I'm finished.
Okay.
I could keep going about 14-year-olds,
But-
but I'm not. That's a dangerous territory.
Will you roll back?
Absolutely.
Like the
I'll veto any
2013.
legislation that limits a woman's right to choose.
But will
New
you,
legislation or old
you said
legislation.
you will veto, so will you go back and if there's
I don't
an
have
effort
the
to repeal
opportunity.
such legislation,
Right.
will you be supportive of that? Will you-
Absolutely. If I've given that opportunity with our legislature, absolutely.
All right. Wendy Davis, the
Mhm.
2014 nominee for governor, told her social media followers not to trust him. She didn't trust him on this issue. Amy Cunningham also doesn't trust you on this issue. You read her piece in Trip Talk. How do you respond to that?
Do you know who trusts me on this issue? Cecile Richards, the former president of Planned Parenthood, recently came out and said there is room in her movement for people with this perspective. And you know who they are? They're people like Joe Biden and Tim Kaine. So this issue is, in my opinion, not really an issue. Again, my personal opinions are not what's important in this election. And I've made it clear this entire time. So I would listen to Cecile, and I think that her leadership in this process is worth listening to.
Okay. Anything you want to say to that?
But, Andrew, you implied that women that have had an abortion do not respect life.
I've not implied that.
You said in your own personal beliefs.
Those are my personal beliefs, absolutely.
So that implies that other people that don't agree with you do not respect life.
I respect people who don't
Andrew,
agree
you
with
owe an
me.
apology to these women.
Listen, I
Wait,
absolutely.
hold on. Please.
And let me say this. I know there's a theatrical aspect to this and to what you just said. But what you just said had nothing to do with what I have been saying. So the reality is still the reality, right? My personal opinions are my personal opinions. And as governor, I trust women to make their own healthcare decisions.
Sheriff Valdez, this week, Governor Greg Abbott's re-election campaign launched a website. I'm sure you
I
checked
heard
it
about
out.
it.
Okay.
I heard about it.
And it highlights your quote, liberal values and your, what they describe, pro-abortion views. Isn't the governor trying to drive a wedge between you and many Hispanics who oppose abortion?
He may be trying to do that, but it's not going to be successful. I am a Texan. I was raised a Texan, I was educated in Texas, and I went out to the military as a Texan. A Hispanic Texan may not necessarily believe in abortion, but they do believe in women being smart enough to make their own decisions. I don't think a wedge will come between a person who's trying to represent the everyday Texan. The everyday Texan continues to suffer and struggle harder and harder. We will be able to get that message out to all the Hispanics and be able to explain and understand that we are messed up. As a Texan, as a Hispanic Texan, the importance of the everyday working person will outshine any other beliefs. We will continue to fight for the everyday Texan.
Do you support a woman's right to choose in all cases, even late in pregnancy?
Women are smart enough to make their own decisions. And I believe that that's a very personal issue for the woman. I have a friend who got pregnant very young and had an abortion. Her Republican boyfriend said, I thought that I was pro-life, but not so much after you got pregnant. It's a personal decision. And healthcare is a right. Abortion is healthcare.
All right. Okay, let's leave it there then. Let's get to some other issues. I'm going to start with taxes. And we've been going with you first. Let me turn to Sheriff
Sure.
Valdez. This is something I want both of you to answer.
Okay.
You both have talked about doing things like paying teachers like professionals, giving them more money, right? Providing more pre-K, building more roads, giving health care coverage to the uninsured, and a number of other things. But these things cost money. But it seems like you guys are nibbling around the edges when it comes to raising new revenue. You say you want to spend some of the rainy day money. You want to draw down the federal match offered if we expand Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act. You talk about legalizing more gambling, but under this Republican-controlled legislature, that's going to be tough to do. And you would close what you call a loophole of commercial property tax appraisals. And a lot of times, when you hear candidates talking about closing loopholes, it means that they're not really specific on what they want to do. Look, the big money to fund Texas state government comes from the sales tax. What exemptions and exclusions would you get rid of to generate more sales tax revenue? Food bought in stores, prescription drugs, something else? Ms. Sheriff Valdez.
The budget is a moral document of the state. We put our priorities in our budgets. As a federal agent, one of the first things I learned when doing an investigation was if you want to know what the person's priorities are, open up the checkbook. Currently, the priorities of our legislation are not the priorities of the everyday Texan. We have more to spend and time and energy for bathroom bills and show me your papers bills and chasing around the federal government in J and home. We need to take those priorities and take those funds and put them where the priorities of the everyday Texans are. Yes, we have to look at, assess the tax code and get rid of some of those old loopholes that are still around. There's plenty of those around. Yes, we have to look at the equal and uniform. And we have to look at new resources, renewable energy. And whatever we decide to do with cannabis, there's another resource.
Would you get rid of some of those sales tax exemptions, popular exemptions, food, for instance?
I think we'd have to re-examine and decide which ones we need to get rid of.
And are you in favor of looking at the state income tax?
No.
So you asked a specific question, let me give you a specific answer, no. I would not close any of the loopholes as it relates to sales taxes, and there's no way we're gonna have an income
So
tax.
are you really talking about real money?
So here's what we got. We put together a plan in my campaign to raise $9 billion. $9 billion. That's a huge number for education. To give you a sense, our total state budget is $100 billion, right? So we're gonna raise $9 billion and put it into education without raising taxes. We're gonna do that by diverting about $800 million that we spend on border security into education. Border security is not a state issue, it's a federal issue. We're going to expand gaming at existing horse track locations where they've already been permitted, already been built. People are driving out of Texas right now to go, gamble in other states and invest in their schools. Let's do here, let's invest in our schools. That's $3 billion. Now we're gonna close the equal and uniform property tax loophole. That's a $5 billion loophole. And you know how it started? In 1997, one sentence was added into law. And there was no debate whatsoever about it. And all of a sudden, there's 34 skyscrapers in downtown Houston, 34. Last year, all 34 of them sued the county because they wanted their property taxes cut in half. Because under that loophole, they can get it. Everyone here, if you own a home, you know it's not the way it works if you own a home. You get valued at pretty much what the market is. So that's not fair. A huge percentage of our state's budget comes from sales tax, like you mentioned, but also property taxes at the county level. And so if we're gonna make a difference, we're gonna have to make a difference in those taxes themselves. And so we have a plan to spend that $9 billion on education, but something tells me you have a question further on about education.
No, I mean, have you or your campaign backed up that $5 billion figure you just?
Absolutely.
What do you base that on?
So, yeah, absolutely. Well, I mentioned those 34 skyscrapers in Houston that aren't paying their fair share. Each one of those buildings is worth several $100 million. I have example after example of companies buying buildings for $300 million, and the next month getting a property tax valuation of $150 million. That's just not fair.
So no raising the sales tax rate is at 6.25 cents now?
We don't need to raise
Okay,
taxes.
and no state income tax?
That'll never happen.
Okay, let's move on. This school year, 185 school districts were forced to hand over to the state a chunk of their local property tax revenue. It's our Robin Hood system, as you know, of equalizing school district wealth. Experts say that getting rid of Robin Hood and avoiding huge inequities in property wealth among districts would require the legislature next year to find $10 billion in new money in the new state budget. Do you favor ending Robin Hood? And if so, how would you pay for it?
I don't think we need to end Robin Hood, but we sure need to fix that thing. Let me give you an example. The Robin Hood, which is also recapture.
Right.
Recapture is a complicated formula that uses a lot of different elements to create that number that decides how much money goes from one county school district back to the state, right? It's complicated. One aspect of that formula is how much it costs to hire teachers, because teachers cost different amounts in different areas of the state. That calculation, that element, hasn't changed since 1989. 1989. It's no wonder that Austin ISD, for the first time now, gives more money back to the state from their property taxes than they put in their schools.
And Houston's getting back.
And Houston's been doing it forever, but Austin's getting more than half back to the state. So we have a huge problem. There may be nothing more important as a governor that I can do than to fix education, and specifically education finance. There's a lot of work that has to be done, because that money changes lives. That money pays for universal high-quality pre-K, full day, which changes lives forever. Let me tell you something. If you walk into the prison system right now in Texas, open up the gate, 80% of those men and women are functionally illiterate. 50% of them are dyslexic. We failed these men and women a long time ago because we never taught them to read.
And you know, that's a great summation of the problem. Is there a solution in there?
In my opinion, the single greatest investment we can make in education dollars ever is universal, high-quality, full-day pre-K. There's no better investment anywhere. And let me say this: if I have to activate the National Guard to teach kids how to read, I'll do it. That's how you make the National Guard.
Listen, Robin Hood has also been called a quality tax. That was so that school districts who were doing well would help the other districts. The problem came about when the districts that were doing well were being taxed more and more, while the state should be putting the same amount into education. The state has a responsibility to provide quality education, quality public education. We need to have our students be able to compete in the global economy. Yet what we have done is put more and more burden on the local communities. The state needs to go back to paying their fair share out of the amounts they have been taxing. What happens is as they tax more, they use the money they were originally using for something else and let the cities continue to pay them out. We've got to stop putting the load on the local community. And yes, we have to have universal pre-K. How a child begins is how they will end. If the child takes strong interest in the beginning of their education, they will continue that on to higher education. The money that the state should be putting in and the cities are putting in, we should be using for free community college. Dallas has a program right now called Dallas Promise. And they're guaranteeing that every person who graduates from high school can continue on to a free community college. Community colleges are what's going to help the students not have so much of a debt when they finish their school. And that should also include trade schools.
Okay, I'm gonna have to stop you. I'm gonna have to stop you there. I will ask you this: in a Republican-controlled legislature, where do you get the money?
what we do, shall I become governor, we negotiate. We come to the table to negotiate. One of the things we're going to do, first of all, is take.
If it was that easy though, Chair.
Right before that, one of the things we're going to do is take the 800 million that were on the board. Now, we have the National Guard in addition to those 800 million. So the amount, we don't even know yet what's going to be the final cost of all the troops on the board. And what is the results? They're taking them away from other areas. When they put the National Guard down there, they take them away from the other areas. And those people have jobs in other areas. So they take away the economy. Well, let me finish your question. We'll take that money away from them. And then we'll prioritize our values. Our values need to be prioritized. And right now, the values that are being prioritized are not the values of the average tax.
Okay, thank you. We're here in East Austin at this beautiful church. And I got to tell you, when I started first coming to Austin, I would hang out over here a lot at this side of town, go to Sam's barbecue, get some ribs. And I got to tell you, it looks really different than it did when I started coming to King. What's happening now is revitalization has come, and that's good, but at the expense of some of the residents who live here and make this an historic community. And we see that happening in Houston, where you live, in Dallas, where you live, West Dallas. It's going on right now, Trinity Groves area. So how do you balance the need for neighborhood revitalization, for economic development in some of these blighted areas, but at the same time protect residents from being driven out of neighborhoods and preserving that important culture that some of these neighborhoods have?
Yeah, sure. You know, gentrification, there's things the state can lead on in this issue. It's happening in Houston, in the Third Ward. It's happening, like you mentioned, in Dallas, and Oak Cliff, and here in East Austin. And there's work that can be done. And here's what we can do. What happens is you have a homeowner who's been living here for 30 years, 40 years, and all of a sudden, the value of their property becomes untenable, right? They can't afford the property taxes anymore in their own neighborhood, all right? Because the neighborhood's revitalizing, and which is good. But there's a homeowner that we need to protect. So the governor and the legislature can create a district, a special district in these neighborhoods that allows a further exemption to the homeowner's exemption for homeowners who've lived there for 30 or 40 years. So they don't get hit with this new property tax that they had no idea they'd get hit with. There's other things we can do too. When the properties are sent to auction because maybe they couldn't pay the tax, and the properties go to auction, what happens is the people who buy those properties then just tear down the house and build something huge on it, right? Well, we can work with the counties and work with the cities to buy those lots so that they don't go to auction, to buy them and give them to developers who are going to develop in the same character of the community so that we can create affordable housing. So there's things that can be done, market-driven things that can be done, and the governor can lead on that. And it's something that's important to me.
Sure.
Affordable housing has been an issue in many areas. The mentally ill, the reentry, the folks coming back into our society, and of course, the economically disadvantaged. There are some things we can do. Among them are incentives. In Dallas, we provide incentives to apartments that become luxury apartments. Around my area where I'm at, we don't need any more luxury apartments. What we need is a part of affordable housing. My suggestions has been that when we provide incentives for organizations to build apartments, a percentage of those have to be affordable housing. The rest of them can be what they had planned them to be, but a percentage of them need to be affordable housing, or they shouldn't get that incentives. The other thing, we were talking about properties. Dallas does have a program where the foreclosures were sold, and they first give an option to the nonprofit organizations so they can build affordable housing. It is happening in Dallas, and it's working. it can work all over Texas.
Sheriff Valdez, as governor, how would you end the mass incarceration of African Americans and Hispanics?
Excellent. One of the things we have to do is look at the reason why a lot of the minorities are being incarcerated. Dallas did a review of certain areas that were the highest crime. One of the things they found, they had no grocery stores, or very few grocery stores. They had no transportation, or very limited transportation. The schools were very scarce. Of course, we have to invest in infrastructure in this areas. We have to provide transportation. We ask the person to get a job, but we don't help them get there. They have to buy food. There's no grocery stores. We have to invest in those areas so that the automatic thing is not to turn to crime. The other thing we need to do is continue to help build trust between law enforcement and the minority communities. This has started, but it's been a difficult road. I've been in law enforcement for over 40 years, and I know very clearly there have been a disadvantage to the minorities. There were times when they were abused, no question. But we have to put people in place who are aware of this and are held accountable to the public and do something about it. In Dallas, one of the first things I did was start putting minorities in management positions. The community does not trust a law enforcement that doesn't look like them. And I made sure that we got involved in community activities. I didn't want for my officers, for the first time to confront a person is when they arrest them. I wanted our officers to be involved in the community before they went and did an enforcement.
Thank you.
Yes, okay, so the question was about the mass incarceration of African Americans. The most important thing we can do, the first thing that I will do, is decriminalize the possession of small amounts of marijuana. It has ruined the lives of millions of Texans. And we need to go one step further. We need to clear the records of the young men and women of all the people who've been affected by that crime going back. There's some great DAs out there in Texas right now who are leading on this issue. And they're leading, but they're getting shot in the back. Right? I need to be, when I'm governor, I will help them and support them in the work that they're doing and pass the kind of laws that need to be passed. The second thing we can do is fix the cash bail problem. We live in 2018, and if a rich man commits the crime and a poor man commits the exact same crime, they have a completely different experience. And that's the facts. And that's not the way it should be. We need to fix cash bail. It's actually a constitutional protection that we already have, but no one's protecting us with it. Again, DAs are leading on this issue, but the governor needs to lead on this issue. It's too important. Criminal justice is an area right now where African Americans are incarcerated at a rate that is far in excess of how Anglos are incarcerated. We have a huge problem here, and it needs a lot of leadership.
Okay, before I bring Jen up, I want to ask both of you this question, and please, if you don't need to take up all your time, you don't have to, but the Texas Organizing Project estimates that Republicans enjoy a structural advantage here in Texas of 850,000 voters in statewide elections. That's a big hurdle. Now, if you're going to beat Greg Abbott in November, you're going to need to appeal to Republican voters. But these are voters who in many cases agree with Abbott on immigration, on property tax relief, and there were polls that even showed that Republicans agreed with Abbott on the so-called bathroom bill. How do you appeal to Republican voters normally?
So the first thing that's happening right now in the Republican Party in Texas is there's a huge schism in the party. There's the Greg Abbott, Dan Patrick side of the party, the guys driving the crazy train with bathroom bills and all sorts of craziness. And there's the Joe Strauss side of the party, the old George Bush side of the party. And those guys, they don't recognize their party anymore. I mean, they just don't. In this Donald Trump world that we all live in, things have changed. And so I think those voters, those Republicans, I don't think they're going to stand in line to vote. At the base level, at the most basic level, people vote when they're angry. And 4 million Hillary voters in Texas are angry. I know because I'm one of them, right? And let me give you the numbers though. When Greg Abbott won in 2014, he won with 2.8 million votes. 4 million people voted for Hillary. 2.8 voted for Greg. I know there's a structural difference in the history, but things have changed now. We live in a completely different time. And frankly, this is our opportunity to take advantage of that fact. Moderate Democrats are winning in red states all over the nation. And that's not a poll, that's an election. Happened in Alabama, happened in Pennsylvania, happened all over Virginia, and it's our turn next. This is our opportunity. We have to take advantage of it.
Chair.
We've tried before, trying to get middle of the road. But the truth is, and I do agree with Andrew, Democrats are angry. There are more and more Democrats registering to vote. You know, I've been told this is an uphill battle. Everybody who talks to me says this is an uphill battle. What other kind of battle do we know in Texas? Was it an uphill battle? I've done nothing but uphill battles. When I was going across school as a child, that was an uphill battle. There was no paperwork. When I was working 2 jobs to pay my way to college, that was an uphill battle. And when I've been working for years in a male-dominated occupation, that's an uphill battle. I'm getting darn good at uphill battles. And this is going to be an uphill battle. But this is what's going to make the difference. The grassroots organizations are also angry. And they're going to do something about it, which we're going to continue to work and go out to the voters, register voters, talk to voters, hear their concerns. Their concerns of a public education. Their concern of a living wage. Their concern about being able to hold their families together. This is what's going to help us win. And yes, it is an uphill battle, but we're getting close to the top of that battle.
Okay. Jen. Right now we don't have a Spanish language question that both candidates will
My name is Jen Ramos. I am the Communications Director for the Texas Young Democrats. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Jennifer Ramos. Soy la directora de comunicaciones sobre los demócratas jóvenes de Texas. Voy a preguntar una pregunta en español. I'm going to ask a question in Spanish. The campaigns can either directly speak in Spanish or they can have it translated. Voy a preguntar en español y las campañas pueden contestar la pregunta en español o pueden preguntar que alguien le traduzca para ellos. The question is as follows. La pregunta es así. Los maestros están pagados bien y poco y con exceso de trabajo al diario. No solo se espera que arreglen con un poco o ningún recurso, algunos distritos ahora están pidiendo que los maestros estén armados con los objetivos en contra de un tirador activo. ¿Cuáles son sus pensamientos sobre armar maestros? The question is, teachers are underpaid and overworked on a daily basis. Not only are they expected to make do with little to no resources provided, but some districts are now demanding teachers to be armed and aimed with an active shooter. What are your thoughts on arming teachers? And this comes from Twitter. Esto viene directamente de Twitter. Gracias.
Okay, I'll start and I'll speak in pieces for you. The question is, and thank you for that question, is should we arm our teachers? And also it's led into with the problems that it takes to be a teacher today.
La pregunta se trata de si debemos de dar armas a los maestros y eso nos lleva al problema de lo que es, qué es lo que enfrentan los maestros hoy en día.
We do not need to arm our teachers.
No tenemos que dar armas a nuestros maestros.
In fact, what we need to do is protect our teachers.
De hecho, lo que debemos de hacer es proteger a nuestros maestros
And invest in our teachers.
y invertir en ellos.
And we can do that by paying them what they're worth.
Y podemos hacer eso en pagarles lo que merecen
And making sure that their retirement program works.
y asegurar que tienen un buen programa de jubilación.
Do you know the last time a teacher received a cost of living adjustment?
¿Sabes la última vez que un maestro recibió un aumento de sueldo para el costo de vivir?
Retired teachers have received one cost of living adjustment in the last 17 years.
Los maestros que ya se han jubilado solamente han recibido un aumento de salario en los últimos 17 años.
That's disgusting.
Eso me da asco.
Sheriff Valdez, would you like me to translate for you? Or?
Yeah, yes, please.
No, I don't think you want that.
Sign language, where's the sign language? Muchas gracias, Jennifer. La primera cosa que podemos decir es que los maestros deben de ser maestros, no deben de ser soldados. Cada padre quiere que su hijo o hija vaya a la escuela y aprenda no a ponerse en peligro. El problema que tenemos no es con los maestros que se pongan una pistola. El problema que tenemos es con la gente que no sabe alguna otra manera, que no puede hacerse un negocio sin violencia. La cosa que tenemos que atender es la violencia, no cómo armar a nuestros maestros. I'll do a short translation of what I just said. Teachers were meant to teach. They weren't meant to be soldiers. The main problem is not the teachers or the students. Every parent wants to make sure that their child comes home safe. The problem is violence. I believe in the Second Amendment. Let me make that very clear. I believe in all the amendments, but I don't believe that anybody who cannot settle their arguments through other than violence should ever have a weapon. Our children are out in the streets marching, begging the adults to be responsible. Our children are giving example to the adults and saying, take care of this issue. We are the adults. We should be taking care of the children, and we should be making the common sense decisions. I am endorsed by the Gabby Gifford organization because we want common sense gun laws.
All right, I'll stop you there. I'm going to take a couple of questions from the audience, and they were all fantastic questions. There was some overlap, but I've chose a couple. This question is for you, Sheriff Valdez.
Okay.
Andrew White has earned the endorsement of every major newspaper in the state, including the Dallas Morning News. Why do you think you lost the endorsements of every newspaper in the state? And how do you respond to their concern that you won't be able to stand up to the pressure Greg Abbott will put upon you?
Well, first of all, congratulations for getting the endorsement. And secondly, I have the endorsement of the people.
Right.
I have the endorsement of AFL-CIO, Planned Parenthood, Tejano Democrats, Stonewall Democrats, Texas Equality, and I could go on and on and on. I also have the endorsement of the Castro brothers, 22 Democratic state representatives, 3 Democratic state senators, and we can go on. It's not important, it's not as important to be able to verbalize. It's more important to be able to connect. And that's where I'm gonna be the candidate, because I will continue to fight and work for the everyday Texan and continue to connect with those Texans.
To the criticism by some newspapers and quite frankly some Democrats that you're not as sharp on issues as Andrew White, are you responding to that?
Well, it's not that I'm not as sharp, because I am just as sharp. The problem may be that I don't talk newspaper language. I talk people.
Whatever that is.
People language.
Mr. Dwight, here's your question. How do you reconcile being an evangelical elder at an anti-LGBT church with the Democratic Party platform? Well, let me just get make sure. Well, and the Democratic Party platform is for LGBT equality.
Sure, thank you for asking that question. I support very much the LGBT community. I understand their issues, I'm passionate about those issues, and I'm willing to fight for those issues. The fact of the matter is, I am a member of a church that, like you said, doesn't believe in same-sex marriage. And like people who go to a lot of churches, people have different opinions in the church. You're not going to find a church where everybody agrees, where everybody's on the exact same page, right? That's the situation that I was in. Let me tell you this, it's a community. I live in a community. My kids grew up in that community. We don't all agree on the same thing, just like I think in your communities. And if you just bail out of your community every time you have a disagreement with somebody, even a serious disagreement with somebody, that's no way to live. I think I can help them. I think I can be there and show them that, you know what? The First Amendment, separation between church and state, is just as important as any other amendment. I wish the Republicans cared as much about the First Amendment as they do about the second one. The separation of church and state is critical to our Constitution and to our community, and that's how I can reconcile those two things.
I got to follow up real quick. My friend R.G. Ratcliffe was out there somewhere in Texas Monthly, did a story when you first started exploring running for governor. You said that you were a conservative Democrat. You since changed that to common sense Democrat.
Yeah.
If you are a conservative Democrat, why not?
Well, because I'm a fiscal conservative, right? I believe in the progressive ideals of our party, but I also believe in paying for them. That's why I put together a plan to raise $9 billion to invest in education, because I believe in education, but I also believe in paying for education. It's one thing to go willy-nilly on new ideas, but you've got to pay for those ideas. At the end of the day, I'm a Democrat. I was born a Democrat. I was raised a Democrat. I'll always be a Democrat. I've gotten in fights with people who said I wasn't a Democrat as a kid. This is who I am. Fairness and equality. That's what all Democrats agree on.
All right. Those are the questions. Do you have any? You have one more rebuttal if you do it quickly that you paid for. So
Let me tell you how I'm going to answer that. In 2004, when I got elected, it was surprising to a lot of people around. But I was in an airport and I ran into a woman who chased me out and said that she wanted to talk to me. She kept telling me how excited she was on election day, that her whole family was sitting on the couch and they got more and more excited as the numbers kept going up. And I'm sitting there looking at this woman, Anglo, well-to-do, from another county, and probably Republican. And I'm thinking, what does this woman have to do with me? And she said, my son is gay. She told me how they were so scared they were going to lose her son because he was so depressed they thought he was going to commit suicide. I asked, how's your son? He's doing better. Then she asked to take a picture to prove to her son that she saw me. As she's taking her picture, she said, your election validated my son.
okay. And I'm going to have to stop. You paid for one more rebuttal as well. Really quick though, because I need to get.
Let me say this, I received the endorsement from the largest LGBT caucus in the state. And the reason why I received it, because we met, they asked both of us questions about their issues. I answered those questions, I understood the issues, and I was passionate for them, and I was fighting for them. The recommendation was to endorse me. Now, I was surprised to get that recommendation, really surprised. And I thought, well, maybe that'll be it. I probably won't win the vote. It went to a vote. I won the vote. And you know what? I was in tears because they understood that I truly believed in their issues and that I will fight for them. It blew me away.
All right, last point. This-
No, let me finish what I said.
We're breaking your rule now, your campaign's rule.
Thank you for making note of that.
One, But 30, 20 seconds, okay?
He might have gotten the endorsement of the LGBT caucus in Houston, but I did get the largest LGBT organization in Texas, Texas Equality endorsement. So did Stonewall Democrats. Stonewall Democrats of Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Austin, and Denver. And he's telling me to stop.
Okay? All right. Those are the questions. Give them a hand, guys.
I go first. Before Hurricane Harvey hit, I brought my fishing boat up from Galveston. It's a fishing boat. I don't know why I call it a fishing boat. I've literally caught 2 fish on this boat. One of them actually jumped in. That's a whole other story. And I had this boat ready in my driveway. On the morning of August 27th, I got a phone call from the police. They had 50 people who were surrounded by water and they didn't have a boat. I grabbed my neighbors, and for the next 5 days, I used that boat, along with my neighbors, to go pull people out of the water. Hundreds of people, all over the city. I still can't get out of my head some of the sights that we saw. We saw people literally running out of oxygen in their oxygen. I hope to never see or be in that position again. Our community should never be in that position again. But I also saw some of what makes Texas great. I saw people doing anything they could do to help their fellow Texans. They ran to Houston. They ran to the Gulf Coast. It was beautiful. When the emergency ended and the cleanup began, Greg Abbott did almost nothing. The most expensive natural disaster in American history, we lost 100 lives. And Abbott's response, we'll deal with it in 2019, the next regularly scheduled session. This is a man who called a special session for a bathroom bill, and he won't do the same when 52 inches of rain fall. It's disgusting, and I'll never forgive him for it. It's time to bring sanity and reason back to state government. It's time, for the sake of our schools, our health care, women's health, gun safety. There's so many important areas where we're failing in Texas. The Democratic Party can stop this insanity by nominating a candidate who can not only support the whole ticket from Beto all the way down, but a candidate who can win. I've received the endorsement from every major newspaper. I've received endorsements from one of the largest LGBT caucuses, and an endorsement from there. And I'm ready. You know what? I appreciate your calling into it, but I want to ask people for their vote. I would deeply appreciate your vote this election. Thank you very much.
Sure.
First of all, let me thank the grassroots organizations. Thank you once again. Thank you to the audience. Thank you to Roma, and of course, thank you to Andrew to having a healthy discussion of our issues. The everyday Texan continues to struggle and finds it harder and harder to make ends meet. They're having a struggle because they're not getting a living wage. They're having a struggle because parents have to make a decision whether to lose their job or take their child to the doctor. We have to fight for paid family sick leave. I get upset with elected officials who have the attitude of, I got mine, too bad about you. I got mine health care, too bad about yours. I got my education, too bad about your public education. I have a decent salary, too bad about your living wage. Look around. This is Texas. This is what Texas looks like. Take a good look around. This is the winning coalition, and this is the grassroots that is going to win in November. My name is Lupe Valdez, and I'm running for governor, and I humbly ask for your support. I am the candidate of the working Texan, and I will never, never, never stop working for you.
starts when? May 14th?
Monday.
The day after Mother's Day,
And
Monday.
the runoff is May 22nd. Please vote. Thanks again. It was an honor. Love being with you guys tonight.